and welcome back to my podcast, Dunya Rising. I am Dunya, your host. I live in the historic town of Glastonbury, and unsurprisingly, I love exploring topics related to spirituality, well-being, and creativity. And I'm releasing this episode on Samhain, a pagan festival celebrated from sunset on October the 31st to sunset on November the 1st. And marks the end of summer, the end of the harvest season, and the Celtic New Year. And what's so exciting about Samhain is that people believe that the veil between the physical and spirit worlds becomes thin, allowing spirits to pass through. So this is a time where people would have honoured their own ancestors, invited their ancestors into the home, whilst also warding off harmful spirits. So the tradition for dressing up for Halloween actually originated from the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, where people believed that the spirits of the dead would return to their homes. So they would wear costumes to confuse and ward off the spirits. And this episode is focused on tarot and chaos magic. And I interview a really cool woman called Masha, who lives in Glastonbury and has such a fairy, witchy air about her that I couldn't help but want to get to know her more and find out more about her magic and rituals. And what I love about this episode is that in talking about witchcraft, we empower ourselves. We recognise that we can also be a conduit to magic, that we can connect with spirit or source within us, and that our connection to nature is so powerful. And speaking about magic and witchcraft feels really provocative, especially after connecting with the land in Glastonbury. You know, for some, it's a load of woo-woo and it doesn't make sense, and for others, it really empowers and inspires them. Masha is so down to earth and grounded in her understanding around magic, and rather than making it into something that feels elitist or pretentious or only for some, she actually talks about it in a really accessible way. In this episode, she discusses her journey into Glastonbury. She retells stories about witches, from the gimmicky Halloween version to one that actually inspires and empowers women. She talks about the Wheel of the Year and Samhain, the power of the darkness in autumn as a time to plant new seeds. She talks about chaos magic and the power of belief, and gives us a little background into tarot and the magic behind it. I'm also really excited to share an unreleased acoustic version of my song Allat, which means goddess in Arabic, which celebrates the power of women and the magic of our sensuality. And I'll be playing this at the end of the episode, but for now, here are some of my favourite quotes.
What drew me into paganism is just the realness of the fact that our gods and our way of life is all revolving around nature. Within chaos magic, it kind of runs through this ideology that we are the tool, we are the power of this universe. There is no God outside of ourselves, and that any magic we'd like to do, we can create from within. We have Samhain and we have Beltane. They're like the sisters on opposite side of the wheels. And on both these days, the veil is thin. So this is a day where our realm on Earth and the realm of the multiverse, and the other side, some people call it the fairy realm, some people call it the realm of death, for example, becomes thinner. It's really important to open a space in tarot to let the divine come in, because the whole point of divination, is that we are conversating now with the divine. It's something outside of yourself, and the tarot is just a conduit. May all energy that I've given away or left behind return to me now.
Just welcoming Masha and Masha's dog Django into the space. Thank you so much. I'm really happy that we finally get to do this episode together, that you're in my flat in the living room. We've got our altar, we've got Django, and we're ready to talk about some magic and witchy stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this too.
Me too. I'm glad that it's happened now and that we're riding this wave of inspiration.
Oh yeah.
And I have so much to ask you and so little time. So, of course, most of the questions, if I meet anyone from Glastonbury, always starts with, what is your journey into Glastonbury and how did you end up here?
So, I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of like 99% of folk that arrived to this town. Because I was following the Magick I was doing a cruise in Cornwall, visiting all these different stone circles. And then I felt a calling to go to Tintagel, to Merlin's Cave. And then by freak accident, I ended up in Glastonbury because the train got lost, basically. And I used this app called Atlas Obscura, which you can use wherever you are in the world. You can put up your location and it will come up with all the occult / obscure or megalithic magical sites in the area. So where the train stopped, I looked it up and it said, get off at Castle Carey and find your way to Glastonbury. And it, of course, showed the Red Springs and the tour. And I've heard of Avalon before, but I didn't really expect it to be as amazing as it is. But it all started from there, really.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't actually know much about Glastonbury when I came here, but I visited once and it just got me from the first time. And I kept coming back until I could find a place to live. Like, it was like a real pull. So I always get curious and love like drawing the dots between other people's stories of how they got pulled in, and that so many people feel that energetic pull.
Definitely, it didn't feel like I had a choice.
Yeah. It was like, your time is here.
Yeah, now, go.
And obviously, I think like a lot of people see you and you've got this kind of like witchy, pixie air about you, and people have a lot of curiosity about your practices. And I suppose like a lot of people would associate Glastonbury as this like kind of witchy pagan place. For you personally, what's your connection to spirituality? I'd love to hear some of your practices. Astrology, moon cycles, herbs, potions. Can you tell us a little bit more about these practices and why they're important to you?
So I would say one of the main things that clicked for me about Glastonbury is, of course, the pagan community. Now, I got introduced to paganism at a really young age. Me and a friend, we got together and basically made a witchy date for ourselves. It became an initiation because all of our manifestations that we burnt in the fire, all that we conjured up that day, all came true. So that's what really connected to how real magic is and how empowering it is for ourselves and how powerful it actually is, you know.
What's an initiation? Why is that something you had to go through with paganism?
So an initiation, I guess it's your first time and you enter the world of magic. And once you enter this world, you can't really go out unless you want to turn a blind eye and just stay oblivious for the rest of your life to the magic that is around. As an initiation, it felt like I was stepping into this magic world and I couldn't go back from that day ever again. And what drew me into paganism is just the realness of the fact that our gods and our way of life is all revolving around nature, which for me is the most powerful force of this earth. You know, yeah, I would say it's all good to worship a deity that maybe perhaps doesn't exist in physical form, someone like Ganesh, for example, who, even though he exists in our hearts or in our minds, and we can definitely feel his power, I always call upon Ganesh whenever I've got obstacles to remove. He is super, super powerful in that way. However, when you're honoring nature and there is an oak tree before you that is thousands of years old and you can feel it and touch it and feel its strength and draw upon what is actually in front of you, that for me is seal the deal. You know, pagan for life, baby.
It's really interesting because I was saying to you earlier, like I listened to the Audible of Women Who Ran with Wolves, incredible book for anyone to read, then started rereading it. One of the comments that she makes is that the relationship between how we've oppressed the land is also similar to how we've oppressed women. So it's interesting as a woman, your connection to nature. The idea as well for me, because I grew up in like a kind of Muslim family, my mum was Christian, there was a lot of like dogma forced on me, but this idea that God is outside of me or some sort of punishing force, but instead paganism feels like actually God is more within or a part of us. It's everywhere rather than like this deity that's somewhere we can't see.
Yes, well that kind of also opens the door to one of my main beliefs is grounded within chaos magic. So within chaos magic, it kind of runs through this ideology that we are the tool, we are the power of this universe. there is no God outside of ourselves, and that any magic we'd like to do, we can create from within. So, in contrary to traditional occultists who need, for example, an oaken wand that's been bathed in the red spring on the 12th moon of this 68th year of the dragon cycle, you can use essentially a lollipop stick and it'll be just as powerful as long as your will is empowered and up to date and fed, I guess. If you've got a strong will, that lollipop stick is just as powerful as the oaken one that has been baptized on the 11th hour of whatnot. But at the same time, it doesn't discredit them either. So correspondences in magic, the more you can get, say, for example, my lollipop stick, I charged it on top of the tool where there are strong, powerful energies and ley lines, and then I washed it in the spring with the intention of baptizing it or using the spring's magic onto the lollipop stick. They're all just going to help out on the power of this lollipop stick wand. So you can then use your imagination, which chaos magic accredits to as one of the most powerful forces on this planet. Without imagination, the magic won't be there. You won't be able to see it. You won't be able to tap into it.
That's really powerful. And so thinking the people that aren't normally thinking about magic or witchcraft or what that is, you've mentioned like three kind of really key things there is the power of our intention, which I think is really big. And this could be as simple as, an affirmation, like, I am safe, I am loved. It doesn't need to be like really complicated. Also the power of rituals. So you talked about, I'd love to hear more of your rituals. You talked about doing cleansing or rituals in the spring, so using the element of water. Yeah. And you also mentioned ourselves as a tool, like we are the medium for this magic to come through. Yes. So it's quite interesting because we're starting to pick apart what witchcraft actually looks like, rather than it becoming too gimmicky, which it can be, where it's so like, you must have this on this day of the 12th night.
And it just becomes a whole capitalist spiel as well. Of like, you need to buy this and you need to buy that in order to become a good witch. You can't do the spell without this specific candle, or it's just a whole nother realm that they've opened up, I think, with the popularization of the witch.
Or the media portrayals of witchcraft that we think witch means this, and actually that's just based on a few really popular TV shows rather than a real exploration of it, which I think it's really important to explore our ancestors and what was happening in the UK leading up to this time now, because I think, again, it's not something that we've really necessarily studied or something apparent in education, but really important for us to know. In saying that witch actually just derives from the word healer. Exactly. I think people see it as dark magic, but actually it's healer.
Well, a lot of the witches that were burned and murdered, essentially, were just the original healers of the land. They would know which medicines to use, which herbs did what, which flowers would ease your stomach, which leaves would help with the head, and which ointments to make. And people were scared of this power, It's so much knowledge that they had that whoever, the patriarchy or whoever you want to call them, who saw it as an attack on the system of what they were trying to create, the Industrial Revolution, for example, didn't really see the profit, didn't really see the power that they really held. So then that fear turned them against them and they became witches. Like even the original image, or an original image of a witch, if you think about Halloween, and they're all crooked-nosed and got boils on their faces, and all of that image came from the abused medicine woman that was disheveled and defiled and then got the crooked nose and everything. So it goes a lot deeper, and then seeing, it's just painful really to look at that image for me, and for most people not to know where that image even came from or stems from is just rude.
Witchcraft bombs this gimmick, it's silly, it's all woo-woo, it's not taken seriously. And I think you bring it to reality when you talk about, witchcraft being understanding the land, what is like coming up for crops or harvest at certain points, like what's good for your health, rather than this obscure thing that only some elitists can do. It's something we can all do.
Astrology and the witch's wheel. So say we start at the beginning/end, which is Samhain, which is witches' New Year. Happy New Year, witches. That's a time where we are going into winter now. Like, there's no going back. There is no turning the wheel the other way around. We have Samhain and we have Beltane. They're like the sisters on opposite side of the wheel. And on both these days, they always say the veil is thin. So this is a day where our realm on Earth and the realm of the multiverse and the other side, some people call it the fairy realm, some people call it the realm of death, for example, becomes thinner. So on these days, you can use that thinning of the veil to draw wisdom, to draw our ancestors in, to speak through to the other side. You can gain messages from the other side and bring them forth. So I call them portal days. It's a portal day. The same on the solstices. We have an alignment with the sun. The sun is our greatest life force. So winter solstice, you have the shortest day. So we're celebrating the returning of the light. So we'll party all night. This is a ritual in itself to give back our love of living. And the same on summer solstice. It's the longest day. So we'll party all day and then party in the shortest night. In a few hours, it's already light time again. Again, it's a ritual for loving life. That's all it is, and the celebration of life itself and the light too. And then if you follow it round, so you've got spring equinox and autumn equinox, is the day of balance. So at this point, it's a standstill, again, creating a little portal of equal day and equal night. Except on spring equinox, we're welcoming in the summer, the flowers and new beginnings and fresh ideas and inspiration. Whereas in the autumn equinox, we're now letting go. And we're allowing ourselves to shed. And it's the same as the leaves on the trees, shedding their leaves and letting go of their old. We're in sync with the world around us. But then something happened. There was a distortion. And suddenly our idea of God became something completely outside of this earth, completely outside of ourselves. And from there, I think, I'm a bit biased, it all went wrong. It all just went wrong. It's like suddenly we're not partying for the sake of existence, for living, not understanding the way the true cycles of the earth actually work, where we became separated from nature, which doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know who came in with that.
I'm not feeling that either. It's really beautiful, and I can see that being one of the principles of chaos and magic. It's not having that dogmatism, because I think it actually really can alienate a lot of us, take us further away from God, exclude a lot of people. And I think one of my most important values is inclusion, and I find sometimes with a lot of religion, it's so exclusive of such large...
really fast.
Yeah, it gets too culty. And I love the way you describe the cycles and the seasons, and I was reflecting as you said that often, like with the spring and the summer, more light, thinking about growth, that people see that as the peak time because we're offering. And for me, it's like autumn and winter becomes this fear time if we don't want that and we want to skip to summer. And I think that's really reflective of this idea that we need to be switched on. We need to be working and putting energy out all the time.
Massively.
There isn't really a lot of honouring in our rituals that we should be slowing down and being more kind of like drawing our energy in during these times, but instead it's almost like we try and keep up and it creates this burnout feeling.
Completely.
But it seems that there can be a lot of magic to autumn with releasing.
Massively.
Like, can you bring that to life for people so it doesn't feel like this dark and gloomy time that we all must retreat in?
So one of my favourite ways of thinking about it is like all matter is spawned from the darkness. The darkness is the most fertile, giving, abundant place where all life is spawned from. So it's in that darkness where we get our greatest ideas. We can pull out our greatest manifestations. We at the drawing board essentially. So anything can be possible or is spawned out of the darkness. Whereas there is this mixed up kind of view on darkness, like, stay away, we must put the night light on, and all that, we can't be left alone in the darkness, otherwise our mind might start projecting something we don't want to see or our fears. But really, darkness allows us a comfort. For me, darkness is very safe. It's very comforting. It's like being back in the womb. We've all sprouted from this darkness to then embody the light. But it all starts from the dark for me. And then from there, everything expands. So in terms of autumn equinox and letting go and shedding our skins, it's a really good time to... We were talking about this before with eclipses. eclipse energy is very similar to equinox energy, where it gives us a time to rewrite our scripts. And we only do that if we want to empower ourselves. A situation that maybe before you saw as discomfort or traumatic, and rewriting the narrative, say it could be you're rewriting a traumatic event, to be like, you know what, without this event, I wouldn't be who I am today. And seeing it through that empowered lens, as opposed to this traumatic thing happened to me and now I'm a victim forever of it, and let it draw you down. So the purpose of rewriting ourselves, which winter can do for us, is letting go of our ego, our faces, our persona, and strip ourselves back from the sun-drunk summer, that can be so... It is crazy down in the summer.
Yeah.
So much is happening. Everybody's out. And there is a drunkenness that the sun gives to us. Things happen really fast, and before we know it, it's full.
Yes.
And then we've got what they call the winter blues. But the winter blues is something, it's so like this melancholy energy, this darkness, this fertility for the next summer. For who do you want to be next summer, for example? What is it that you want to bring to light when the light starts coming back? It's like that time, that gestation period of nurturing things that you want to keep into your life and letting go of the excess. But you got to spend that time with self in order to realize it.
Spending time with self. And is that not what we're avoiding when we're staying busy all the time?
Exactly.
I feel like you've articulated that so well in such a really beautiful, comforting way about the darkness and the stillness. It's something that I reflect on with meditation, because we were talking about that earlier. Meditation isn't a goal-oriented activity. It's not like reaching a destination. One of my favourite spiritual teachers, Ajashanti, is saying like meditation is happening all the time. It's not like a state. And I kind of see meditation, darkness, hand in hand. It's that clearing that emptiness. I love how you said about kind of stripping ourselves back and rewriting our scripts. And I feel like I really resonate of going through a difficult time at the moment in my life, feeling like a drop of confidence, low self-esteem, and feeling like I'm in that process of rewriting this version of myself. And how exciting that can be when we sort of slow down and really honour this time to do that inner work. So that when it gets to spring, we can just come out and
back to the nature. It's what the land is doing. You know, everything kind of drops into the land, into itself. And then all the seeds are germinating during this time and being held in the earth so that they can re-emerge in spring. And that's kind of like our personalities as well. So we gestate during the winter. And then we come out with these beautiful flowers and know what we want to give back out there. And then we go in again. It's just the constant ebbs and webs of life.
It's taking time for integration, because I feel that I've picked up a lot of tools and resources along the way, along this journey, along this life. But sometimes I'm not giving myself permission to slow down enough to really integrate the lessons. And it's that danger of going from one thing to the next. I would bring in that you gave me this book to read, which I'm really excited to get through, Condensed Chaos, An Introduction to Chaos Magic by Phil Hine. And I was interested just reading the beginning bit. It talked about a new approach to doing magic, some of the themes that we've talked about, avoiding dogma, basing it on personal experience, still having that technical excellence, is still really taking care of how you're doing it, and deconditioning so that we're less attached to our beliefs and ego fictions, and also having this altered state of consciousness and that being a big part of it. I was really enjoying reading this opening and picked up on certain quotes, and I'd love to see how you resonate and how this applies to kind of your interpretation of chaos magic. So it was said that by Austin Osman Spare, magic is but one's natural ability to attract without asking. I really like that quote.
Yes.
And then back to the book, one of the quotes from the book, the fundamental to magic is the actual doing of it. So again, that kind of experiential learning, which I really like. Humour is important in magic. which I love because I feel like a lot of the spiritual
so many
scene
people get so serious.
too serious. It's just too pretentious, and I can't handle it.
It's missing the point there. Yeah.
But interestingly as well, one of the things around belief, which I'd love to explore more with you, it says that chaos magic recognises the power and malleability of belief and consequently uses belief as a tool for magical action.
I believe this so much.
Can you unpick some of the stuff that I was saying about chaos magic and what your interpretation of it actually is?
Okay, so with the belief system, for example, I highly understand that without our belief system, so if we strip back to what is important to you in this life, it can be to what makes you happy in this life. What are your passions? And then asking yourself, why are those your passion? And when you start to understand why you love the way you love and why you do the things you love because of why you love them, you then get a deeper understanding of who you are. What is your personal soul on this planet? What is its frequency? What is its understanding? You gain a deeper understanding on a soul level of your individuality. So if I was going to write a list now, being like, I believe in, and I'll put 10 things down, and you put what you believe in, and you put 10 things down. Usually there's not many crossovers. You'll be surprised. But unless we're in a church or something, and then everyone's going to say Jesus and the Bible and all these things. But usually when we're coming from such a mixed background, what we believe and what gets us going is going to be completely different and unique to ourselves. So with magic, I've always said, greatest killer of magic is doubt. As soon as you doubt anything, the spell is gone. As soon as you let a little tiny crack into your belief, it's gone. It's ruined. You have to start again and cultivate that belief again for yourself to breathe life into the spell. It's a really important part.
It's like the centre of magic really is the belief in what you're doing,
definitely.
Or belief in yourself.
Both, because you can't really have one without the other, really, you know. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in the magic at that time, it's all going to be gone. And I've had that before in tarot reading as well, where for a moment I would waver out of the space that I've created for the reading, and then I'd waver back, but it's just not the same. You know, you have to really stay focused and give it your all in that moment.
That's really interesting because it's something that's kind of tangible for people to draw on if they are interested in witchcraft, if they do want to bring intention and ritual and spells into their life, that it actually starts with the belief.
Completely.
That's really interesting.
So with the chaos magic energy, if you can personalize it as much as possible to things that really get you going, then that's when you really hit a tear in the quantum field of reality for sure, 800%. So for example, with me, I'm doing a lot of solar magic in this time. I'll do a lot of spells at noon because that's where the sun is the highest in the sky. So my belief behind the sun in that moment and casting the spell at that specific time, it just empowers it all.
I feel like I've definitely had these magical synchronicity moments when I am in that open state, and then because I'm in this open space, I'm grounded, I'm believing in the highest possibility, things start flowing in.
Exactly, because you believe it.
Yeah. That's really, really beautiful to kind of focus chaos magic
enough in that way, and its relationship with the will and how we can move through reality if we know what we believe in. It's the same if you lose belief in yourself. If we lose belief in ourselves, then it all spirals downhill and you're like, wait, well, who am I? What am I doing? And there is nothing to power that engine. So I think it comes from believing in yourself and then believing in your relationship with the outside world and then going from that. So whether you're into herbs, into fairies, into trees, or you like Viking magic, like whatever it is that's tickling your belief tingles, go with that, because they're going to serve you. And they could, you could look into it and it could be some ancestral things going on there. It could be the gods might be speaking to you from that kind of specific region or place. Like I draw upon Indian gods, I draw upon Viking gods, I draw upon Slavic folklore, anything that gets me going, I'll draw from that. And that's what chaos magic is so great, because it doesn't limit you to just one god. accepts that they all exist.
Yes.
And if one is calling to you that time, listen to it and go down that path and see what happens, you know.
I love how personalised it is, actually, and it's kind of like the opposite of dogma, where you must do it in this exact way, and if you don't, then you can't connect with God, you're not doing the spell properly, you're not doing the ritual right.
Anything goes with chaos magic.
That's really powerful. Yes. I think that's a big message, and I think it feels like a very empowering process, really. I love that it's kind of like starting with what makes me happy, why is that, and really centering on like, who am I, and how, if I wanted to kind of practice magic.
In the magic world, if you don't know who you are, you can get lost very easily. It's very important to really know thyself before you go about there and try and learn the universe too. You know?
We are wild, wild women. Wild, wild women. We are wild, wild women run free.
I guess like I was really interested in the link between chaos magic and tarot, and I was so excited to bring both in this episode. Yes. So do you want to start by telling us a little bit about tarot? Because I know many of my own friends kind of practice using it. A lot of people might think it's woo-woo. A lot of people are very curious. It's got an interesting background with Jewish mysticism and ancient Egyptian rituals and deities. Can you tell us what your understanding of tarot is?
So they say it started off as a card game, an Italian card game. And then there's like records from the 16th, 17th century that these cards started to be used for divination. Now,
what does divination mean?
So divination is basically using tools usually, but you can also use the power of your imagination as well, in order to foresee a circumstance or to answer personal questions, understanding a world, be it yourself or the querent or the other person involved, and tapping into the divine in order to bring in some sort of divine substance and answers from the other realms.
And how does this relate to tarot?
So with tarot, I always see them as doors. There's 78 cards, and each card is a door. And you can walk through the door, and on the other side is a fractal, a segment of existence, a situation of life in one way or another. So this is where the tree of life comes in as well, with the Kabbalah and the Jewish mysticism.
Yes.
Because the tree of life basically explores human ascension, starting from the bottom and then going up the psyche and our body and transcending to the higher realms, which then essentially you have God at the top.
Okay, so it's almost like an enlightenment process.
It's like a map or a path that you can go down, but it takes years and years of true study. And to be honest, I haven't delved too deep in that one myself. Back to the tarot as being a door. So every door you turn over is a portal to, some of them can be mundane aspects of life and others can be archetypes. So you have the major arcana, which is drawing from an archetypal system of the human psyche. So there's 22 different fractals of the human psyche put out essentially into a map of deeper understanding of self.
Okay.
Everything kind of comes back to those archetypes. And you can get it through literature, through art, through films. Like everything can draw through archetypal images. And then you have the minor arcana, which are more elemental suites, which also mirror the usual playing deck that we have today.
Yeah.
For example, Three of Hearts is the Three of Cups. You have the Queen of Wands, which is the Queen of Clubs.
Okay.
You know, so there's a double action going on there.
Yes.
But you don't have the major arcana or the pages in the playing cards.
Yeah.
But it is possible to read with playing cards too. So every door, every card that you turn over will show you or provoke within the reader's psyche essentially what is happening in that person's life.
I guess, like, let's start with the major arcana, because you've said that it's kind of considered the really big parts of life that we need to focus on. And what does it mean around the Fool is the first one, it's 0, and that as you work through the different cards and go up, it's a journey, it's a cycle through life. Like,
Yes, so
can you give us an example of what the Fool means?
It can be read as you start off as the Fool. You have nothing. It's number 0. But then there is the argument of 0. 0 being nothing is already something. So it's kind of like the impossible card.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting how in the normal playing deck that we have today, there are no major arcanas that entered that deck apart from the Fool as the Joker. And he not only appears in it once, but he replicates it twice. Mm-hmm. So as much as the Fool is the Fool and can be written off as a fool, he somehow persevered and got through and doubled up twice to the playing deck that is nearly every household has them.
Yeah.
So there's something very cosmic and often overlooked about the Fool.
Right.
So even though we could start with the Fool, there is an argument that we also end with him too.
Interesting.
Yeah, when you think about the ebbs and flows of life, it's constant. We get everything we want, and then at times we'll lose it all again. And then we'll accumulate again everything, and then we lose it all again. So instead of a linear kind of journey, we can put the cards, all 22 cards, in a circle where they meet and end with the Fool at all time. And then you have the Magician. So then you're starting over again and you're realizing, okay, what is your intention again for this next wave of life? What is it that you want? So you have all the tools on the table. You empower yourself and you enter your divine feminine. You enter the High Priestess, and you basically get in touch with the dark psyche part of yourself. Yeah. And then that comes forward again. And then we're on the physical manifestation of the divine feminine, which is the Empress.
Okay.
And then once she's been mastered, then you move on to the divine masculine counterpart, which is the Emperor. And then number 5, the Hierophant. And then once those two are alchemically married, I guess, in the brain, then you've got the Lovers, right? So it's like there is a certain order to the tarot that makes sense in order of human evolution. So we've got the masculine and feminine imbalance, and then we've got the Lovers, and so we're starting again as one, and then it jumps to the Chariot, number 7, which then is like, it's not even human anymore. Do you know what I mean? You go from Lovers, a man, a woman, to then an inanimate object, which is the Chariot. So now we've gone to the 5D realms, of envisioning ourselves as an actual chariot. And then you progress forward, and then it's strength. So now we're going through values of humankind. So you've got strength, you've got temperance, and you have justice is one of them.
Judgment or...
Yeah. Also there's all this occult knowledge that religions that are really dogmatic, they know about all of this, but they do keep it under wraps, like not for everyone, it's only for the priest to know. If we could take it back to ancient Egypt, it would only be the high priest and high priestess who would know how to define.
Okay, well, in terms of spirituality, it would be through the high priest and high priestess.
Yeah. There will be the ones you'd go for the divination, for example.
But this is a ritual that we can all call upon, really.
Exactly.
A lot of people feel like they can't super understand it. I still feel like I'm really on my journey, and my tarot looks quite different to the traditional one. Can you tell us a bit about your tarot deck specifically? So I'm just a through and through believer of the Rider-Waite deck because it's one of the oldest. Rider-Waite.
It's called Rider-Waite.
Rider-Waite.
Yes. So it was made by the occultist Rider-Waite. Except he wasn't an artist, and I really love that he implored a friend who's Pamela Coleman Smith, and she came up with most of the images for the Rider-Waite tarot deck, or all of them actually. And every image, so every portal of every card nothing is in there by accident.
Okay.
Everything that makes up the image is to help us understand what the image is trying to say.
Yes.
From the colours of the clothes to the little details in the corners to the type of birds that are in there. Everything has been intentionally sought out and put in that portal on purpose. And with that, back to the intention again. So intention is everything. You have essentially a witch, Pamela Coleman Smith.
Yeah.
Mastering putting all these elements into one card, and what that does for the reader, if you're looking at this card, it evokes a feeling, it provokes a vision. It's meant to stir the psyche in order to get these messages from the other side.
Because normally we're so looking for an intellectual analysis and exact interpretation of the cards. And I read somewhere that actually we've lost that kind of ability to go into that childlike state of imagination, and that our consciousness can read symbols, but we've gone so into this intellectualization of things that we almost, again, it's like overthinking, over-analysis, when we can, without looking at the book, explaining it, probably pick up a lot for ourselves.
Exactly. I think it's really important, if you're starting out with tarot, to just have the deck and pull a card every day, for example, and meditate on it without Googling what it means or reading it up in a book, and just seeing what comes up for you on your personal journey.
Yes.
Because if you then want to become a reader, you've built a specific relationship with those cards to tell you specific things that no other reader is going to know about. It's about that relationship, I guess, like strengthening the relationship with the cards and really knowing what they mean for you. That's where I'm coming from. Even the world, we all have a different relationship with the world. So why would tarot be any different?
We are wild, wild women. Wild, wild women. We are wild. Wild women run free.
Love to come on to what your sort of ritual is around tarot, just to give an idea of what that looks like in real life. But first of all, can you explain what the minor arcana is in comparison, and what does the different suits actually mean?
Okay, so we have cups, we have swords, we have the wands, and we have pentacles. And all of them represent, again, different aspects of life. But here, they're split into 4 elementals. So the cups are water, the wands are fire, the pentacles are earth, and the swords are air. Now, once we have that kind of distribution for the elementals that govern us in this realm, we can start looking into what each elemental means. And when you've got knowledge with pagan roots, for example, they're like well up all over that. They're always calling in the elementals, and they really understand how every element serves a purpose here on this planet to aid us in one way. For example, water, the cup suite, for example, that's to do with our emotions. Our psyche, the way we relate with our heart, is very heart-based. Our family, our bloodlines, that's all the cup suite. Then we move over to the pentacles, for example, and that's the element of earth. So our health, our work life, our structure, what are we eating? All these earthly pleasures and delights. They're all fixed in that suite of pentacles. Then we move over to swords. That represents air. That's all on our mental scope. So how is our mental health? How do we view other people? How do we defend ourselves? How intellectually adept are we in this time in our life, for example? There's also a lot about betrayal, I find, in the swords as well. That is the only suite to really show betrayal on a level of the human kind of scope. And then we have finally the wands, which is fire. That's our spirit. That's our spiritual journey. That's our passions. That's what lights us up. What energetically, what do we carry within us, and without us, what do we need energetically to fan our flame to carry on, I guess. So it's more of the spirit journey.
Beautiful. And I wondered, you talked about it's not just about picking the individual cards, it's about the relationship they have with each other. And I was lucky enough to get a reading with you before we started this recording, and I could really see a story emerging in my life through that reading. And, how can we interpret that relationship between the cards and how that tells a story?
That's why, again, it's so important not to just digest the reading, the meaning of each card through a Google search or a book, because you're going to be stuck in this rigid, this means that and that means that. After some time, you're going to realize that every card next to each other will change its meaning. So if you had the Magician and the Sun side by side, it's going to mean something completely different to having the Magician and the Tower side by side. You have to move with what the cards are trying to tell you. You're not going to become a good reader if you just read rigidly, oh, this card means that card means that, and this card. You need to be able to tap in and see what they are actually trying to show you, the bigger picture of it all. And there's something really beautiful. So I only got my first 2 books on tarot maybe like 2 years ago, and I've been doing it for 9 years now. And I got to a point within myself where I thought, okay, now it's time to educate myself a bit further in this. And I draw a lot of wisdom from Alejandro Jodorowsky,
Right.
who writes an amazing book called The Way of the Tarot. And it is pretty hefty to digest, but I highly recommend it. His understanding of the tarot is like no other that I've seen ever. And within that book, you can see the depths of each card.
Right.
More so than I've ever seen
Okay.
another writer talk about them before.
Interesting.
Yeah, he goes in.
What about your personal ritual? Because you opened the space, you called in the elementals. What does that mean for you? You said it's really important to close the space as well.
Yes. It's really important to open a space in tarot to let the divine come in.
Yes.
Because the whole point of divination, is that we are conversating now with the divine. It's something outside of yourself, and the tarot is just a conduit. It's like a translator for you, in that time. So space holding and circle opening is so essential in magic, because we are now creating an intentional space for the divine to feel comfortable enough to come through. So I usually open the space and I call in the directions, I call in elementals, and I always call in beings of the querent to come through and help guide this reading. Because if you think our ancestors, our personal guides, angels, they're the most benevolent for our personal path, right? So I could call in my guides, sure, they'll help me see some things, but they're not going to be as powerful as the ones who are behind you every step of the day and channel the right advice that is suited for you and your personal path in this journey.
You mentioned elementals as well. What does that mean? Because some people, definitely a lot of Glastonbury people will be like, oh yeah, the elementals, the directions, but other people might be like, what do you mean the directions?
That's true. So I derive this from pagan magic, is that every direction has its own element. So you have the north, which is earth, you have east, which is air, south, fire, and west is water. So having all those directions and all those elementals, you are calling in spirit in its most raw form, everything that makes up this world, and then you're calling them from all directions forth to hold space with you in this time. It's kind of like a little cheat sheet for opening a little zip in the time-space continuum. Again, you're like hollering the divine down. Does it make sense?
Okay.
You're like calling all of that into this space.
So that's
right
what
now.
you mean about the directions and the elements.
Yes.
I understand that. So that's actually an important part of your tarot practice. It's not just whipping out the cards, we'll see what we pull. It's taking the time to connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's honouring the elements. It's honouring the person's guides.
If there are readers on listening to this, they would totally understand. It's just such a different reading for when you just like take a little sneak peek into the tarot to when you've actually created a space to honour what's about to come through.
I definitely felt the power of that when you were doing a reading for me, and that I was looking at these cards and really feeling how it was pulling up things that maybe I didn't want to look at or things in my life. And I felt grateful for the way that you held that space, in that it felt more powerful than perhaps some of my own readings with myself, where maybe I've not as connected as deeply with the cards, or maybe I've tried to rush
It's always
the
hard
process.
reading for yourself though, because sometimes we just don't want to see what's coming through, and it helps for someone else to reflect that truth for us.
But also you said that it's really important to close the space. What does that mean?
So a lot of the time, say if I've been reading all day, for example, and I don't close the space, I'll be stuck in the realm of the divine. So all my channels are still going to be open. So really it's for the reader, if anything, to physically close back those channels. Going to do something more mundane without being heckled by the universe and still receiving the messages, because you kind of open up your vessel, I guess, as a channeler, as a reader, and to allow messages to come through. Yeah, it's a fine balance of being grounded and then being like in the other realms. And if you don't close your energy up, you can be left feeling really frazzled, completely kind of burnt out as well, and just still kind of half flailing in the astral, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's really important. You open your circle, and then you close your circle, and you thank the elements, you thank the beings that have helped you in this reading, and you close that up.
That's really beautiful. It reminds me of ways in which I do offer sound healing and how important that is, starting with my own intention and asking people what their intention is, but also honouring coming to the end of like maybe having a gratitude moment or something to bring that ritual to a close.
Yes.
I think it's so important. Otherwise you can kind of leave and your energies
hanging,
spread, and I've definitely felt that. And I think it's really important to think about energy practices of like protecting our energy, especially if you identify as someone that's very sensitive, which I do. I know that I can quickly be drained if I don't think about, okay, if I protect my energy, or for me, having a shower to cleanse the energy is really important, or taking my shoes off, being barefoot on the land, really important. So yeah, I'm really glad to kind of bring to life these rituals.
We are wild, wild women. Wild, wild women. We are wild. Wild women run free.
I suppose like one of the last questions I had for you is sort of a message of, what do you think some of the misconceptions are around tarot and witchcraft and magic? Because I think a lot of people will see Glastonbury as a kind of woo-woo place and it's just talking a bunch of nonsense. Can we kind of unpick some of these myths or misconceptions? Like, why is it so important to you? Why is it so powerful for you?
Well, the thing that drew me to the tarot and makes me feel good about giving readings, I guess, is I always like to leave people empowered. Often people will come to me with certain questions, or they've been on a roller coaster in this life and they're feeling a bit scattered or confused about the direction. And I love starting the reading, and you have this confused person before you, and we kind of lay down the cards and we go through the questions. But I love wrapping it up so that person leaves my presence with feeling empowered, knowing what to do next. That gives me a great sense of joy that I've just helped someone. But this is, definitely feeling like part of the higher calling. But that leaving people empowered is so important.
I mean, it's definitely become like a real important tool for me, and something I discovered in Glastonbury alongside sound healing. So it feels like this is a real place of discovery, being in Glastonbury. Really, I guess, like, just to close, what would you say to anyone that's maybe like new to magic or ritual or wanting to discover witchcraft? Like, where's a good place to start when it comes to ritual and ceremony in your life?
I think just keep it simple. See every morning as a blessing and start from there. Ritualize your mornings. The fact that you've even woken up, on another day, and it is paradise land that we live on, and being able to ritualize your morning coffee and or your tea and your brew, and having that moment of the morning to really appreciate that you're awake and that you're alive and that you're healthy. And also a really good technique, I would say, before you do any magic work, is always protect yourself. So a really good spell that I do a lot, especially at the end of the day, but you can do it at the beginning of the day too, is may all energy that I've given away or left behind return to me now. And you just call that in 3 times. And that allows all the pieces of yourself that you might have given away throughout the day to just return back to self, and you become whole again. It's quite a good thing to do in the morning too, if you've been astrally traveling and doing dream work. But that one is a really good one.
I love that you talk about like keeping it simple and like the way that we can start our day, and also calling our energy back, calling our power back, because we're so distracted, and kind of our energy and our attention is so divided at the moment. So I think it's beautiful to encourage people to bring consciousness to how they start their day. And
but it's also the type of rituals, like people are like, oh, you must do rituals, when most of the time you do as well. It's like, well, birthdays, that's a big ritual. Christmas, another big ritual. There's all these rituals we always do, and there's like some not the best rituals, but like say, oh, it's Friday night, I'm going to go to the pub ritual. Like they're all rituals, but it's what do you want to ritualize? What are the things that you do all the time that make you happy? That's a ritual.
I think it's nice because it's taking away the hierarchy that there are these elite people that are magicians and witches,
No,
and
we're
then there's
all
the
witches,
ever...
We're all magicians, we're all wizards.
Yeah.
It's just up to you how you want to manage your sorcery and your magic.
Oh, that's really beautiful. And just so grateful for you coming on the podcast and bringing tarot, bringing chaos magic to life in a really accessible and grounded way. So I just want to give you a really big thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So happy we connected and I found another Glastonbury witch. That's brilliant. Thank you. And thanking Django too.
Yeah.
The male dog. Yeah. We need the animals. We need the animal medicine.
That's another thing. Should I say about the witch?
Yeah.
So back in the day, warlocks, which are male witches, they were supposedly the keepers of cats. And female witches, you can trace them down. I think one of the most primordial witches is Aradia, she came from Italy. And she'd always have a hound by her foot. So it comes with the understanding of energetics that cats are usually female energy based and dogs are usually quite masculine energy based. So warlocks will have cats to balance their energy and witches will have dogs to balance their energy. And the same with Hecate as well, the mother of the witches. She's a pronounced dog owner as well. Yeah. But then Sabrina changed it. So because of Sabrina the teenage witch having the black cat, suddenly there was this whole black cat outburst of witches need cats. But witches need dogs.
That's really interesting. Let's balance our energy up. I really appreciated his energy in this space and having the power of 3 to do this episode.
But of course.
Yeah, big thank you to you. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
so excited on this.
Happy witching season.
Woo-hoo. Thanks for listening. I hope you got a lot from this episode and was able to learn and connect more with paganism, autumn rituals, magic and tarot. To find out more about Masha, I've linked her Instagram and I've shared all of the articles and book recommendations Masha made as links in the description. For more content and videos of my work, follow me on Instagram at Dunya Rising Podcast. And now, an early release play of my song Allat, which is about redefining stories of Arab women, celebrating feminine power and sexuality. Thanks for listening.